the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it.
So how to make steel guards and why I did it. So I had 37-inch tyres and I had quite cut guards, and I had cut snake flares, which are a fender flare that bolts to it, and I lifted them up about 3 inches over factory. So they did clear the 37s quite well, and they had quite a lot of up travel. But then they wore out and I needed new tyres, and I brought 40s. I knew they'd be too big, but I wanted 40s. This isn't even on bump stops, and you can see like I can fit my finger in there only just, completely touching it all the way around and kind of fit my finger there. So I want my guards to be as wide as my tyres, because to make things legal, and I'm getting certification engineered as such for this car. So that's kind of what we're dealing with, where the wheels are way wider than the guards. They're a negative 44 bead locked, and the tyres are a 13.5 wide. So yeah, quite a big wheel. So this is a cut snake flare we were talking about. It's a bit damaged because, like, it's just what happens with these. They don't last very long. This pretty much sat like that. And I knew this would just never work. Couldn't even go in a straight line, let alone turn. So just want to put the grinder through here and here. Here's a picture of just before I cut it. I put masking tape lines down the whole side of the car on the top body line and the bottom body line. So with the hand grinder, I cut the top and the bottom line, front and rear, because it was a wagon back then, and removed that whole middle piece. So now the bottom's quite a lot wider, and I put these filler panels in just to finish it off, because you need to add more material when you pull it out. And then I put these braces in just to hold it for now in a position that I like, so I can cut out with cardboard and make a template for steel to weld in. But basically here I'm just getting the shape right. The rear door has already been done previously, where I think I might add that video to when I do the ute chop, so we'll talk about that later, but it all matches anyway, which is what I'm after. The other benefit I got was I could run the deck in parallel with the body lines and get a 1950 wide deck that was no wider than the cab itself. So I chopped the whole guard and actually made it higher and lifted the original bottom half of the guard, and then that's why I've got this gap here, which I will be filling in. So the whole wheel tub itself is way larger than it was by quite a lot. Same on the back. The back's like way larger than factory, because factory you'd be around about here. Get my cardboard. It's not quite big enough, so I have to do it twice, but I'll use 2 bits. Put it up there and trace out my shirt. There we go. That is the shape of my guard. I'm going to have to trace off the steel.
So I'm quite happy with that shape. So let's make it out of steel.
But before I do that, I'm just going to take my bull bar off, take the headlights out, take the grill out, and anything I don't want damaged or in the way. Grinding can do a lot of damage to headlights or like plastic, glass, paint, anything. The sparks embed into it, and then you can feel them, and also they'll go rusty and you can see them, and it just ruins anything. Like, for example, this is my GoPro that I had lying around quite close, and it's lucky it's got a protector on it, but you can see all the grinding sparks on it. So I'm quite happy with the top and the way the guard's coming along and the shape of it. Now I'm just going to focus on the actual guard itself, like where the wheel is, and give it some clearance and make sure it never hits in the future. So I'm going to cut it out quite a lot bigger. So I'm using the factory nice folded edge that's inside the guard. I've made it bigger, moved it back slightly and lifted it, but I'm still keeping that original nice shape and like half round circle of the guard. Just need to make it fit and trim up the existing guard to the same shape as it offcuts. Then I can run a nice weld around it, and I don't have to fill any welds or nothing overlaps. So I'm just working on that now. So here I'm actually cutting out the factory swage line for the mold, where the mold sits into. But on an 80 series, they don't actually sit into it. They sit quite far back. I'm not sure why, but usually it's covered with flares, so you don't notice it, but I'm not having flares, so I want this to look quite good. So this section here I'm going to save for later, and I'll show you in a second. So just once I get these fitting, I'm going to just tack them up and get them welded, and I'll show you. So I've trimmed it up to a pretty nice shape that I'm happy with. I've just swapped from a cutting disc to a sanding disc now, and I'm just going to give it a sand where I'm going to weld it, just so I get a nice weld, because paint or anything like that, when you're trying to weld it makes a horrible weld, and it's just not worth trying. Like, so I'll sand this up, and I'll show you where I'm at. I'll show you what I've got. So here I chopped out this section and moved it back so it fits nicely right around. A factory LandCruser has about this much gap from the edge of the mold to the ridge where it should be. So I want it to fit like this, so it's even all the way around. I'm not really sure why Toyota didn't do it to start with, and I'm changing to the smaller molds like what I'm holding on to. The door has bigger molds, but I'm not having them anymore. I'm changing the whole lot. I cut it a bit small because this was here, and yeah, I did some changes, but I'll just fill them in. I'll cut that one into a triangle, fill that in. It's a bit annoying, but it's okay. I'll know for the other side. So that's what the rest of the guard is looking like anyway. And then I'll put a piece in there and fold it. It's because I lifted it, so there's a gap, because I've made the whole wheel arch bigger, so yeah. So it's been a couple of days and this whole video is kind of like that. It's not all filmed in one go. But basically where I'm at is I've filled in the wee patch holes that I was explaining about earlier around the mould. I've tacked in all the edge of the guard. Now I'm just filling in the piece between the edge of the guard and the bottom of the guard just here. So I'm just drawing up this patch to make, so I folded up a piece 90 degrees to put into there. So I'll just do that and then we'll see how we go from there. If you've done stuff like this before, you'll know that even this kind of like rust repairs, I guess, just making patches and cutting it out, it takes quite a bit of time. Like, you have to trim it, trial fit it, then trim it a bit more, trial fit it, because you don't want to trim too much off, because once you trim too much off, you can't have to start again. So yeah, this is kind of why the whole build's sort of like this, and that's what takes up a lot of time. I just use a felt pen or Vivid or anything I really got handy and just draw where I want to cut and just where it needs to be cut, and then try it again and just make sure that it's actually going to work. I guess it's the old saying, measure twice, cut once, because you don't want to go cutting in too much and just trim too much off, because you will have to remake that patch again, and then it's just going to take a lot longer than you need. As you can see, my black one, I'm not taking hardly anything off. It's just enough for what I need. Like, I'd probably be better to switch over to a sanding disc right now, but I'm honestly being lazy and I need to cut this bit anyway, so I just didn't. So I know you guys don't want to watch me grind and test fit patches all day, so I'm not going to do that. Basically, I've got the shape pretty good now, and it fits, and this is my patch. So I'm ready to weld it in. So that's how I did most of this, and that's how you guys can do most of this too. But this short clip took hours to get to the process, because it's just a very tedious sort of job. These are engineering magnets. I just bought these at like a local hardware store, and they're real good to stick. They stick to steel because they're magnet, and it'll make the patch and the panel you're welding to level, because it just sticks to them level. So they're quite handy. But they're always, here's me trying to clean them, because all your grinding sparks, like metal shavings, just stick to it. It's quite annoying. Now that I got a tack weld in it, I can remove my magnet and carry on. It's really important to just keep checking that your two panels are level. You don't want one to be slightly higher or lower than the other. You want them to be dead level. So this is why I'm always like pushing with my hammer just on the one that's slightly higher and just bringing it level with the other one and then tacking it up, because otherwise you get a step after you've welded it. No matter what I'm doing, I tend to stand back and just look at it and think, is this working? Is this the shape I want? It's really easy to get carried away off the welder and just keep welding, and then it's not to look at it after and think it's not what I'm after, it's not what I was trying to achieve, and then you have to go cut it all off, which is much easier just to cut a few little tack welds and then just do what you need to do rather than cut through a whole weld. Of course, once you're happy, go for gold, weld it all. Just remember, don't weld heaps in the same place, because just spread it around. To try to spread the heat around too, because if you weld in one place for too long, it'll get really hot, and heat distorts steel quite bad. Sometimes I can get carried away and weld in one spot for too long, and I'll regret it, because it does distort the heat quite a lot. Because you can see in this time lapse, I'm just going from area to area to area. There's a lot of welding to do, and as I weld, I also panel beat up to get it the right shape. So I'm continuously, once it goes out of shape, I'm bringing it back into the right shape. So the tools I'm using is a dolly, so I'm backing up my steel with a dolly, and I'm using a hammer, a panel beating hammer, and a flipper. If you want me to go over panel beating in a different video on how to use hammers and flippers and stuff, let me know. So I've done quite a bit of welding now, and I'm just, if you put your hand flat on the panel and rub it back and forward, you'll kind of feel where your hand drops into lows or highs. You kind of know where you are. And if you can't tell that, spray some, it doesn't matter what colour, but spray can on the panel. And then you can use a sanding block, or in my case, I'm using a file, like it's a panel beating metal finishing file, and just skim it along the panel, and anything high is going to scratch the paint off. Anything that is low, the paint's going to stay there. Then once you've worked out what areas are low, you can put your dolly behind those areas and then panel beat them up and bring them up and level it out. The harder you push on the back of the dolly, the faster and better results you'll get. You kind of want to do this as you go, because if you don't and you keep welding, it's the wrong shape, and you're going to spend a lot of time at the end trying to reshape it back to the way it was, and you almost ruin the panel. So it does pay to take your time. Just repeat this process until you're happy. I repeated this process quite a few times. So I've taken the guard off the car now, and here I'm just welding up all the gaps, anything that needs welding that I haven't already welded, filling pinholes, and just sanding it up, and just finishing off all the welding, sanding, panel beating, and just getting it right. I prefer to take it off because you don't have to worry about grinding sparks so much,
Makes panel bending a lot easier too, because you can hold your dolly behind it anywhere you want. So I've got the guard back on, all bolted up. Quite happy with the shape. I like how it curves background to where it meets with the bull bar and how high that is. And the clearance around the guards is plenty. The wheels should never hit it. I am going to test it though. I'll lower it back down onto bump stops and have a check. I like the way it looks down the side of the guard and how wide it looks. So we drop down on bump stops now. Gap's good. Clearance is good. The wheels do stick out a little bit. Scrub bars down the side. I'm going to bend up the tube and have that slightly sticking out.
I mentioned before, I put my scrub bar up there, so it's going to be a bit wider than the wheel. Through, so that line I talked about goes all the way through to the front. Then this one already sort of comes out factory, but of course I've just made it way bigger. And then the same at the back, but I'll probably explain the back in a separate episode when I explain the chop and all the rest. Back. It's the same deal. Pretty happy with that.
I just noticed in the video I added, this wasn't fitting properly, like that line around there was real bad, but that's because this isn't actually bolted on, it's just hooked on there for demonstration purposes of this video. Round here is massive, like the gap. This is on bump stops, and I've got all the clearance, so the wheel should never go any higher than this. Like if I was to jump this thing and land on bump stops, this is the clearance I'll get. And when it articulates, that wheel comes up like that, so it's on an angle and goes in, actually in there as well, which is great because I have tried it on a forklift. This is actually version 2 of this guard. I did make this guard previously just with sheet metal, but I realised it's not the right way to go about it, so that's why I did it this way. I didn't bother putting that in there though, but I might add some photos just because it was a wagon at that stage, and that might be quite interesting to see because I did make this whole wide body originally when it was a wagon, and then I chopped it in half after that. Talking about the ute chop, my next episode will be the ute chop. There's already hundreds of hours gone into that, and there'll be quite a few episodes on that. So if you did like this video and you want to see more, please subscribe, because I'll go into heaps of detail of this, and every crazy custom thing that I come up with and do, I'll make a video on it, because I've got heaps of ideas for this and other projects in the future. I called this DC Garage, which you probably realised at the intro. So DC Garage, I've decided, will be everything that's basically built in my garage, and all my personal builds I'll make DC Garage. And so I'm also going to do DC Adventure, where once this thing is done and on the road, I'll show you guys what it's capable of, and I'll also be showing myself what it's capable of, because I don't know either. So like, I'm expecting it to go really well, like 6 40-inch trips, so I should have plenty of traction. I have all the articulation in the world, and I'm really looking forward to that. I am setting this up as like a hardcore touring vehicle. I didn't want it to be just a boring touring vehicle, so it's on the mix of between like full-on mud, rock crawler, touring vehicle. So if you're still here, thank you, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you didn't, let me know why and what I can improve on in the comments section, because I'm doing this for you guys and I want you guys to enjoy it. This is my first video, so it's not perfect.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want.